Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Tom Marshall. Today we are going to look at The Smashing Machine, directed by Benny Safdie and starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt. Round one, fight! Do you like the UFC? Do you like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Do you like Emily Blunt? Then this film is for you. So the film is basically about the early years of the sport of UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so it centers around one fighter in particular, Mark Kerr, who one of the pioneers of the early years of the sport and was one of these fighters that initially had not lost a single fight. And when we meet him, he's about to enter one of the biggest fights of his career and unfortunately loses. And the film basically is about him trying to sort of get to grips with the idea that he's lost, and he goes through many sort of trials and tribulations, ends up with substance abuse, with alcohol, drugs, and sort of on a downward spiral. As with him, he has a support system. His girlfriend at the time, Dawn Staples, which is Emily Blunt's character, who is there basically to help him through this time. And basically, she was like, I've had enough, go off to rehab, sort yourself out, and then come back stronger. So he does that, he goes to rehab, all is well initially, and then he is then invited to a UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship series, or sort of championship event in Japan, which is where he does majority of his fighting. And so it's his comeback story, going from losing his first match, bit of redemption from going to rehab and getting himself back together into fighting shape, and then entering into this tournament. And he is also being trained by his long-term friend called Mark Coleman, who is also one of the pioneers and fighters of the UFC around this time, along with Mark Kerr. And so it's about this sort of unit of people trying to figure out why they do what they do, and why try to understand the world of the UFC. I actually felt the film was really, really good. I do find that during the non-fighting scenes, the scenes between Emily Blunt and The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I do feel that Emily Blunt did quite a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of like the emotional stuff. Don't get me wrong, Dwayne Johnson does a fairly good job here as well. Although, having said that, I do feel like he probably shouldn't have cried. He kind of does this crying style that kind of sounds a bit like you're trying to get out of something and you bring on the fake waterworks, and when you're a kid you're like, oh, I don't want to go. It's like that kind of sort of crying. I do feel, but overall, like, aside from that, like, I do feel like his performance was actually generally quite good. However, I do think like the main talking point of the film, which kind of overshadows it a little bit, which is both a good and a bad thing, I'd say, is Dwayne Johnson's transformation. He had put on 30 pounds of extra muscle. He's big enough as it is, and he got pretty big for Hercules years ago. But when he did this film, I mean, he looked like a tank. Like his arms were like the size of my waist. I mean, it's ridiculous. So he had 20 something odd prosthetics on his face and on himself, all there and everywhere, which was actually really quite close to like how the real Mark Kerr would look like. And so I think the makeup team did a very good job with that. But like I said, like that seems to be very much the big talking point rather than the actual film itself. Also, on another note, I would say that this is probably like the last hurrah for Dwayne Johnson to do something as physical as doing this film. Now, he's got to be what, in his late 50s, I'm going to say. So he's not as spry or as athletic as he can possibly be. There were some photos of him recently at Venice Film Festival where he'd actually lost quite a lot of weight, and it's just not sustainable to be able to sort of carry that much muscle and also get battered and bruised, at that age. Like, there's got to be a point where you're just like, I've got to stop. I've got to take care of myself. I've got to relax, maybe do some more dramatic roles, which I think that's what he's trying to do now, because it gets to a hard to say it, but they get to a shelf. These action stars have like a shelf life. They can't keep doing it forever and ever and ever, because they're just going to get injured. They're just going to get hurt, and they're not going to be able to be sustained throughout a whole entire movie doing all these different types of stunts and moves and sequences that are actually quite intricate, especially during the UFC fighting scenes. Yes, Dwayne Johnson has got the wrestling background and the technique and the skills that allow him to do it, but time goes on. You can't stop age, and with age comes more difficulties and more injury, more prone to injuries. So yeah, you've got to take care of yourself as you get older. So yeah, I think this will be like very much like a last hurrah for him to sort of, go out with a bang with the big action movies and things like that, and maybe head more towards sort of a dramatic territory. And I feel that this film is very much a good showcase of his skills as a more dramatic actor in inverted commas. So be interested to see what he does next. I do feel like where the film shines most is during the UFC fighting sequences. It kind of feels like when they're showing the fights, it's like a televised broadcast. There's a few shots where the camera is above the ring and also below ringside as well. And so you kind of have those different angles and shots and different variations of sequences that are really, really quite good. Also, you feel every punch, every kick, every smash to the face through the sound design, and it is brutal. It is just like a full-on thud every time it gets smashed in the head, which happens a lot. And yeah, I mean, it's what can I say? Like, it's a really, really good fighting film. Very much reminiscent of Rocky. Even Rocky had a montage, and so obviously at the end of the first Rocky, as we know, like, he doesn't actually win, but also they do a genius thing here where you don't necessarily have to be a fan of UFC to enjoy this film. They do this thing where they make it more about the characters. The UFC just so happens to be like the setting and what's in the background, and it also does give you like an interesting insight into that sport. Like, I had no idea that they all shared the same sort of green room, locker room, whatever you want to call it. Like, they're all in the same spot. They all interview sort of together, and they all have their press junkets, sort of media obligations that they have to go through all together. And it's very much a community of fighters who really sort of like bond and band together through the hardships and through the again, trials and tribulations of being a fighter. It is quite a harsh sport, because if you're not winning, you're not going to get paid, especially during these early years. Now, everyone recognizes the fighters, everyone knows who the fighters are, and they get paid millions and millions and millions of dollars. Whereas back in the early years of the UFC, they were getting paid zilch, barely anything. So it was like a really good sort of interesting insight to the whole sport. And so I think I myself might certainly delve into it a little bit more as sort of like a passive follower of it, and just try and sort of learn a little bit more about it, I think. But yeah, let me know what your favourite type of fighting or boxing or sporting type of film in the comments and chat, and see where it goes with that. And if you want to get the full scope of it, definitely go and see it in the cinema. Like I say, you do feel every sort of punch, kick, and smash to the floor, smash to the face in this, and it's really sort of well done. Yeah, I would say Emily Blunt is probably the standout in this whole film in terms of performance-wise. She really pulls out all the stops in this. So yeah, I highly recommend this film. You don't have to be a fan of the UFC to go and see it, which is even better. So it's accessible. They made it accessible to everybody, which is great. So yeah, so thank you very much for seeing this video, and I shall see you in the next review.